Justin Hayes here from the Superhuman Show, where we talk movement, we talk posture, we talk breathing, but more importantly, we talk about how these things tie together to help you achieve any fitness-oriented goal. These things set the foundation for anything you want to accomplish from a physical perspective with your body. Oh, what are we at here? We are on episode 4. And, the goal with the podcast thus far is to say, cover a topic and try to give some sort of actionable advice. But I got to be honest, today it's just a little bit of a rant. I hope you stay tuned in because I think you'll get something out of it. But what I want to discuss is the idea of getting back to the basics. And I don't say this from a perspective that I'm against chasing, high-end goals. People think that I avoid, prescribing high-end exercises or, trying to tackle very strenuous and physical-oriented stuff. But that's not the case at all. I'm a huge fan of these things. And, many of my goals, my own personal goals, are what you would consider on the higher end of the spectrum. So I'm a dreamer just as much as the next guy, and I want to do amazing, awesome, unreal things with my body and, use my fitness to its full potential. But that's not without mastering the basics, and I think that's what has kind of dropped off. Lately, I get emails and forum posts from people, and they'll look at a video of somebody doing parkour or a CrossFit move or somebody leaping onto a 63-inch box. And they think it's cool, and then all of a sudden, that's the goal they're chasing. And the thought is, I'll go ahead and tackle this move. I'll tackle this maneuver. I'll learn and go out to and try to do this. Well, usually you're setting yourself up for failure there because you're missing an important part of this, and the important part is the actual journey, the adventure of going through the steps to get to that goal. You can't just skip to the end, and especially when it comes to the human body, you have to build up, right? If you sit at a computer 8 hours a day, and then all of a sudden you want to go out and leap down stairs or jump from building to building in some sort of parkour move, you got a long ways to go. You need to get general, just physical preparedness. You need to get that and master it and hone it in before you would ever tackle anything like that. So what I call this shooting the half-court shot syndrome. And you've probably seen it before. It's the guy at the gym, right? And he's chucking up half-court shots or working on the three-pointer just because, that's what's cool. Knocking down that shot is awesome and great and all, but it doesn't make you a basketball player, right? It makes you adept at one item, one thing. And to be honest, you're going to be a piss poor basketball player if that's all you got in the tank. If you don't have a decent crossover, if you can't dribble penetrate, if you can't shoot a 10-foot jumper, those are the basics of the game. They go so much further towards making you a good player or good basketball player in this instance than being a great three-point shooter or chucking up half-court shots. And that's kind of the point I want to drive home here. Basketball, just the analogy in this situation, but it carries over into anything else you would do. So today I want to I want to take you through 4 parts here. I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about when I say the basics, what I mean, what I'm referring to. And then I'm going to give you 3 reasons why it's so important to master and own the basics before you proceed on to anything else. So let's get this party started. What are the basics to me? The basics to me are you need to move well and you need to be reasonably strong. And to sum up moving well, I just like to see the ability to squat, the ability to hinge, the ability to push, and the ability to pull. What are some examples of this? Squatting, everyone is familiar with. Hinging would be like a deadlift motion, and pushing, like a push-up, and pulling would be like a row. And ideally you'd be able to, without load, do all these movements while maintaining a decent posture, right? Having neutral spine, the right, very minimal compensation. The right muscles are doing the right work at the right time. And now, after you have established the basics in that department, after you move with some reasonably good level, then it's time to start loading those patterns up. And so all that is the exact same patterns, those squat and those hinges, push, pull, and now you're adding a little bit of load to those, and that is it, right? Moving well and getting strong in those basic patterns are what I consider the basics. My number one reason for this push towards getting back to the basics is that it's the 80-20 to me. And if you're not familiar with the 80-20 principle, it's the idea that 20% of the input, a lot of times in goals or anything you're pursuing, 20% of the input produces 80% of the result. That's what the basics are. When it comes to general preparedness, general strength, the basics are what produce that 80% of results in this area. And so I'm saying to you, if you show me a person who squats well with load, good form, and could put a little bit of weight on his back or in a front squat, hinges well with load, push, pull, same thing. You show me that guy or gal, and I'll show you a person who's already 80% of the way there. You can just taper and tier and layer things on top of this to produce the extra 20% if you need it. But to be honest, that's it. If you move well with load in these patterns, you're in good shape. You've got the 20%. My second reason for my big push back to the basics is that the basics are universal, right? So whatever you're doing, if it has a physical orientation to it, if it's an athletic goal, if it's just a general physique-oriented goal, anything that has a physical base, well then, by definition, the basics are the foundation of that. Let's take it back to the basketball analogy again. If I'm talking about something like court movement or the ability to dribble, these things have so much carryover into so many elements of the game, right? They're the base for so many things you'd want to do in basketball. So practicing and mastery of these affects so many different areas of the game. Whereas if I was just working on reverse dunks, right, some very niche down, very technical skill, that has one result, right? It affects one area of my game. It makes me a better reverse or 360 dunker. Mastery of that is cool. I guess it's a nice parlor trick, but it doesn't really ramp up the overall ability for me to play basketball. Same thing. Mastery of these basic patterns and loading of these basic patterns carries over into so many different areas of physical task, athletic task, and any sort of goal that has its roots in physical performance. My number 3 reason for getting back to the basics is injury prevention. I'm not saying that this sort of thing, that ownership of the basics makes you bulletproof, but I tell you what, it's as damn close as you can get. And I don't want to be a broken record here, but you show me a guy who squats well, hinges well, pushes and pulls with some decent load, has some command of single leg exercises like a lunge or even like a farmer's walk. You show me that person, and I'll show you a guy who is likely to ward off injury. I'll show you a guy or gal who will be proficient at moving well throughout their years. Whomever that individual is, the likelihood that they have a pain-free and longer career in whatever activity it is they choose to pursue is much higher if they're moving well and they're strong in those basic patterns. Short and sweet, those are my 3 reasons why I think you should get back to the basics. Did I convince you? I hope so. I can't tell you how important it is. And just a little recap. The basics are just those essential human movement patterns. And if you can do those with a little bit of load, add a little bit of strength to them, then that is the biggest bang for your buck from a physical perspective. It's the 80-20. It is universal, meaning it crosses any sort of physical activity you want to do. The basics are there. They're needed for everything. And it is the quickest way for you to injury-proof yourself. I saw a clip on YouTube the other day. I don't even remember what I was looking for, but and it was a clip of the Karate Kid, and it kind of reminded me of this subject matter that I was about to tackle on this podcast. And it was that whole wax on, wax off. Mr. Miyagi had Daniel-san out there wax on, wax off constantly. And Daniel-san's always coming back saying, when can I start learning to kick people, punch people? And he was just stick with the basics, understand and master that. And what it does is it opens the doors for mastery. When you have the essentials, the basics, the core components down, it opens the door for mastery. It makes it a more seamless transition. It makes it easier in the long run. The vested upfront effort is worth the tail-in reward. My takeaways for this episode are, first of all, if you haven't seen The Karate Kid, if you didn't get my wax on, wax off reference and it didn't make a lot of sense to you, if it didn't hit home, what is your problem? Get out there and watch that movie, please. Second takeaway, own the basics, own them. Worth your effort, worth your time. If you have any questions, you're trying to figure out what are the basics. Maybe something didn't set right on this episode with you. Maybe something did hit home and you need to speak to me. You need help in any way, please. Justin@superhumanpursuits.com. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm on social media as well. www.superhumanshow.com, and you can find the show notes for this episode. And now I need you to do one thing for me. If you have the time and you enjoyed this podcast, please take the time out of your busy schedule to head on over to iTunes and leave a review for this show. I will greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Talk to you next time.